Well, it is great to have all of you with us today. And 10 years ago, a group of dedicated, committed, passionate people came together and they saw a need. And not only did they see a need, they decided to do something about it. And I think that is important to highlight because I think all of us, there's moments like if we see needs, the question is, right, are we going to do something about it? And this group of dedicated, passionate, committed people saw the need and said, we got to do something about it. And 10 years ago, we launched our Du Bois downtown campus. Think about that. 10 years have gone by. And when I think about 10 years, and I think about especially that group of people, there's two thoughts I just want to highlight because I think it's really important for us to remember the importance of that decision and that group of people. One is this. Is that decision took Tri-County Church from one location to two locations. We call it multisite. And that decision was so transformative to who we are as a church today. We now have 7 locations. And what makes 7 locations such an interesting number is 80% of all churches never make it past. If they actually go multi-site, they actually launch a campus, a location, they never go past 2 locations. Why? Well, if you own a business and you've ever gone from one location of that business and opened up a second location, you know why. The complexity, the effort, the stress, it becomes really difficult. So 80% of all churches that go multi-site only launch one other location. They have 2 and they're done. But what happened is when that group of people saw a need and they launched downtown Du Bois, there was another group of people in Clearfield that said, we want to reach our community as well. And that group of committed and passionate, dedicated people said, you know what, we got to launch a Tri-County church in Clearfield. And all of a sudden, before Tri-County knew it, they went to that 3rd location, breaking that 80% barrier. And I think about that. It's historic, especially when we think about our Grampian location and North Central and online and now up in Ridgeway of what God is doing and who knows where else God is going to lead. But the second thing I think about when I think about 10 years ago was the why. Because the why drives everything. And the why is because that group of people saw a need to meet the needs of people right in that specific community, that specific area. They said, we want to meet those needs. Same thing with Clearfield. We want to meet those needs. And you see, that is a deep-rooted part of Tri-County Church. It's truly why we want to go into every community we can, is because we want to gather people together to meet people's needs, go on a spiritual journey with them, pointing them to Jesus and repeating. It's what we're about. And back in December, we launched a nonprofit called Square One Community. And Square One is all about coming beside not just Tri-County Church, but Tri-County Church, other churches, other organizations, other business leaders to say we want to help be the church, meet people's needs, but we don't want to just hand things out. That's not what Square One Community is about. Square One is all about helping people go from just surviving in life to thriving, giving them the tools and resources and walking with people so that they can thrive on their own. And on Saturday, Square One was up in Elk County in Ridgeway, partnering with CYS there, giving away hundreds of bags filled with items for kids, bags that represented hope. Bags represented love. Bags represented that people care about you. And I just think about this group of people 10 years ago. Who we are as a church today and what we're doing as a church is because of this committed group of people, passionate, seeing a need, and saying we want to do something about it. So not only are we celebrating 10 years for our downtown campus, we're just celebrating what God continues to do in the life of Tri-County Church. Isn't that exciting, right? Yeah. Well, my name is Chris, and we're kicking off this new series titled Victory, Live to Win. And there's a statement that I don't want to just a flyby. There's a statement that it'd be so easy for us to kind of look at and then gloss over and move on. But this statement really becomes a foundation for us to stand on as we make our way through this entire series. And this is a statement that God wants you. I mean, this is personal for you. God wants you to live to win. That God desires for you to win at the one life that you have. However long or short that your life might be, that God wants you to win at life. And the significance of that statement is is tied to probably, we've all had times where it just doesn't feel like winning, does it? For some of you, just coming into this world, like none of us, like we don't get to choose our parents. They kind of get forced upon us in most cases. And for some of you, your childhood, you just didn't start winning. You came into this world and it just started extremely, extremely rough for you. For some of you, over your lifespan, your relationships, maybe a marriage or two, right? You've just, when you look at it, like, I'm not sure if I'm winning in life. And that's real. It's real for all of us because we all go through periods of time where it just doesn't feel like winning. And for me personally, I think about my life, I think about my childhood. I actually had a really incredible childhood. I'm very blessed to have two parents that loved each other, very engaged with each other, just as husband and wife, and with me and my sister, and they loved us. I was very blessed. But my parents didn't have that type of childhood. They were both brought into this world, and everything was stacked against them. I mean, their stories were vastly different in the specifics, but in all reality, I mean, everything was stacked against them. And as I've grown older and I've looked back on my childhood and I've asked the question, like, how in the world did my mom and dad break the cycle? Because usually, and some of you know this to be true, that when your childhood is that rough, that dark, that destructive, that cycle repeats. So I've just asked the question, how do I become the lucky one where my parents, both of them, broke the cycle from their childhood? And it comes down to two things. And this is going to feel like a churchy answer. I just want you to know, it's going to feel like it. But I tell you, it's these two things. You see, my mom and dad both were raised in a religious house. My mom would go to church on Easter and Christmas. She would get a new dress, and so she loved going to church because she got a new dress. My dad was raised in a house where his stepmom was a town piano player and organ player, and so whatever church denomination paid her the most money, they would go to that church. So for my parents, faith was all about religion. They got married. My dad went off to Vietnam. They came back. He got a job in California. They moved to California. And all of a sudden, their faith journey shifted because they realized that faith wasn't about a religion. It was about a relationship. And so when they named Jesus the subject of their life. And that was the first step, realizing that it was all about a relationship and had nothing to do with religion. But so many people stop there. And what my parents decided to do is just not stop there. So many people name Jesus the subject of their life. They're like, yes. But their life doesn't change. But what my mom and dad both decided to do is they wanted their entire lives to reflect Jesus. Now, they used different words, some 45 plus years ago. But what they did was they decided that they wanted to love like Jesus loved. My dad was never, I was never told that his dad loved him or his mom loved him or his step-parents loved him. Like, he never heard, I love you, son. My dad's dad never hugged him. He was never shown that type of affection. But the more my dad grasped Jesus' love for him and how Jesus loved people, the more he showed that love to me. I don't remember a time where my dad didn't say I love you to me. I don't remember a time where my dad didn't hug me daily. But it all came out of not just naming Jesus the subject of his life, but going, I want to love like Jesus loved. And then my parents started to live like Jesus lived, live differently. And they could have stared at the childhood and said, well, our childhood is dysfunctional. What else can we do? We're just going to repeat the pattern. But they realized that following Jesus is going to cause them to live differently. And they started doing that. And they started working on it. They started talking with other Christian couples that had great Christian marriages and had great parenting skills. They started reading everything they could, and they started to work on how to live and how to love each other as husband and wife and how to parent us kids. And right, they started to live differently, but it was all tethered to living like Jesus lived. And then they started to lead like how Jesus lived. I don't remember time not serving in the church. My family was all in serving the church. Why? Because my dad realized that the church was the hope in the world, and my dad wanted to take all of his leadership gift from the business leadership sector to say, how can I help the church reach more people, tell more people about Jesus? And oh, by the way, I watched my parents leave behind what Jesus left behind. List of names, people that didn't know Jesus, But God intersected my parents' lives with their lives. They told them about Jesus. They named Jesus as the subject of their life. But my mom and dad wouldn't let people to stay there. They're like, no, no, no. Now you need to love like Jesus loved. Now you need to live like Jesus lived. Now you need to lead like Jesus led. And now you need to leave behind what Jesus left behind. And I watched my parents change the course of their life, which in return impacted my life, which in return now has impacted my kids' life. Why? Because they went from religion to relationship. But from relationship to we want to reflect Jesus in every aspect of our lives. So if you came into this world in your childhood, everything was stacked against you. You can chart a new course, a new path. And so as we make our way through this series titled Victory, Live to Win, I just want you to know, we're going to look at different areas where we can win in, but it's not going to be easy. I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be easy. It's going to take incredible focus on your part, incredible dedication, incredible hard work, and intentionality. It's what it's going to take from you. But hold on to the fact that God desires for you to win in this life. He really does. And so as we look at these different areas, I'm just going to come back to say, hey, this is, especially the one we're going to look at today. The one we're going to look at today, it has to be number one on the list of most difficult things for you to overcome. One of the most difficult things for you to try to get your arms around. I'm just going to tell you, it's going to be, but if you focus on it, if you dedicate yourself to it, if you are willing to put in the hard work, if you're willing to be intentional, I'm just telling you, it's going to help you win at life. You ready? Let's jump in. Researchers have told us that the average person has somewhere between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day. And that's a really wide gap, isn't it? And probably you're wondering a couple things. One is, well, what's better, having less thoughts or more thoughts, right? Like is intelligence tied to that? And if you're married or dating someone right now, you've already labeled your spouse or the person you're dating which kind of extreme they're on. Like some of you are married to the person that has maybe 12,000 thoughts at the most. And if you're that person, you're thinking about your spouse going, yeah, but he or she's like way up there on 60,000. But that's a large spread of thoughts. But that's what they've come to, that the average person has 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. Now, what's really interesting is these two percentages. I mean, one's interesting, the other one's revealing. The interesting percentage is 95% of our thoughts are repetitive. Day after day after day. We are really boring creatures. But you think about it. At first, I saw that, I'm like, really? 95% of my thoughts are the same thoughts? And you start realizing they are. I mean, have you ever gotten in this thought pattern day after day after day? Hey, what's for dinner? Yeah. What's for dinner? I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. What's in the refrigerator? Nothing. Well, I can't find anything because it's packed with food, but nothing's in there. What do you mean nothing's in there? Well, nothing I want to eat. Okay, do you want to go out to eat? Sure, let's go out to eat. Where do you want to go out to eat? I don't care where you want to go out to eat. Let's go eat, and you name a place, and that person goes, oh, I don't want to eat there. And you're like, well, I thought you didn't care. Well, I do care. I don't want to eat there. So where do you want to eat? I don't know. You tell me. Right? Like, you're exhausted, right? You're like, I just want food. How do we just solve this issue, right? I find myself in our family, like that's the repetitive conversation. Like we have nothing in the refrigerator, yet we can't find anything in there because it's so packed with food. And you start thinking through your 95% of your repetitive thoughts. But the revealing percentage is this one. 80% of our thoughts are negative. And we wonder why social media, let's just pick on social media for a moment. Man, it's nauseating, the stuff people post. And at first you're like, oh, bad social media. But no, in reality, 80% of all of our thoughts, that's average. Some of you are way higher than 80%. Some of you are trying to convince yourself right now that you're lower. And some of you are thinking to yourself, yeah, but my spouse, I know what percentage they are. And you just proved my point. Think about that. 80% of our thoughts. And here's the thing with thoughts. Our thoughts, all of our thoughts, the thoughts that roll through our brain, are connected to our feelings. And our thoughts and our feelings together will always influence and reveal our actions. Always, always. I'll prove in a moment. And as soon as our thoughts and feelings come out with our actions, now our actions actually reinforces what? Our thoughts. And there's a cycle. There's a cycle. And it repeats itself so many times we don't even know it's repeating itself. Here's an example. Maybe you were raised in a house where your mom or dad, or both of them, looked at you and said, you will never be worth anything. That was just your framework, being raised. You're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You're going to fail at everything. So your thought process got hardwired in childhood to think that you're not good enough, you'll never be good enough, and you'll never amount to anything, and everything you'll do, you'll fail. Well, those thoughts generate feelings that you aren't good enough, feelings that you are a failure. Those are real feelings, and you feel them deep. Well, those thoughts and feelings come out in your actions. So every time you do something, when that something fails, guess what happens? It reinforces the thoughts that you're not good enough, you'll never be good enough, you're a failure. And even if something is successful, guess how you view it? It's not good enough, will never be good enough, and you're a failure. Why? Because your thoughts influence your feelings influence your actions reinforces your thoughts. I mean, this applies to me. As a teenager, as a teenager, I hated crowds. I hated being around people I didn't know. I'd walk into rooms, and if I didn't know people, my first thought was to go find a corner and hide. My dad was the opposite. My dad was that personality that could walk into a room of strangers, and he, at the end of the night, would be best friends with everyone. I'd be in the corner. And all of a sudden, as I got into my adult life and my leadership life, I realized that my kind of social awkwardness, my fear of talking with people, because I would think in my head, I'm like, yeah, I want to meet people, but what if I walk up to them and then I don't know how to start a conversation? I'm not sure what questions to ask. What if I sound stupid? And what if the whole time they're looking at me going, why is this guy talking to me? I would play this whole scenario out in my brain, and all of those thoughts would generate feelings. So I'd walk into a space, into a room, people I didn't know. I would find a corner because that was safe. And then I would leave that event and say, see, no one wanted to talk to me. And that would reinforce all of my thoughts. And all of a sudden I realized that was going to be the lid on my leadership. Because my leadership, I was in the church world, which is all about people. So I started working on this because I realized that would be a lid everywhere I would go. Every conference I would go to, every group that I'd enter into, every time I'd come to a church event and I didn't know people, like I would feel all of this. And I was like, that's your lid. So I started to imagine, like college game day, where the team's running down the tunnel, and usually like college football teams all have some saying, some plaque, something. And, guys will just be slapping that as they go on to the field. It's like, that's the moment. Like, it's game day. We are ready to play. And I started to visualize, like, every time I'd come into an event, a conference, a gathering of people where I didn't know people, I would envision that this is game day. And literally, I would start thinking, hey, Chris, it's game day. Game on. You got to walk in, head up, shoulders up. You got to be ready. You got to engage everyone. You got to look at people in the eyes. You got to do this. You got to do this. I started to have this mental conversation with myself, which that mental conversation, those thoughts generated feelings. I can do this. I can talk with people. I can engage with people. Didn't like it. It wasn't about liking it. It's about doing it. And all of a sudden, I started to do it. And those actions, right, started to reinforce as I started having some really good engagement with people. And I've been working on this for decades. Last August, I went to a gathering. About 100 different pastors from around the country. I knew no one. Flew into Atlanta. I got on the MARTA. I was taking the MARTA to Buckhead. And I remember I'm sitting on MARTA, and I'm going to walk into a hotel lobby with 100+ people I didn't know. And what used to take me weeks to get ready for, it took me seconds. But this is what I said. Chris, you step off this MARTA, it's game day. Get ready, go. That's all I had to say to myself. And I stepped off that train. I had my bag. I took a 5-minute short walk. I walked into that hotel lobby. Was my heart racing? Yes. Did I feel yes, apprehensive? Yes. Like all of that was real. But it was game day. And I made my way around that lobby, and I shook people's hands. I looked them in the eyes. I engaged with them. By the time I got back to my room that night, I was exhausted. But I nailed it. Well, you have to realize that these thoughts will generate your feelings, which will influence your actions and guide your actions, which will reinforce those thoughts, and that's a cycle. John Gottman has studied marriages for over 2 decades at the University of Washington, and he's landed on this 5-to-1 ratio. So if you're married, thinking about getting married, dating might get married, thinking about getting married again, you got to realize this. 5-to-1 ratio. And he says, if a married couple keeps a 5-to-1 ratio, their marriage will make it. If they don't, it will fail. And what's this 5-to-1 ratio? 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative. What's a positive interaction? A comment, a statement, a look, a facial expression, a touch, you name it. But in your marriage, if you have 5 positive to every 1 negative, your marriage will make it. But if that ratio slips, it won't. John Gottman has gone to a point with a 90% accuracy. Think about this, 90% accuracy, that he can tell within 3 minutes of engaging with a couple, looking at this ratio, 3 minutes, 90% accuracy, whether or not that marriage is going to make it. And here's what's happening in some of your minds right now. Let's just call it out. Some of you are thinking right now, yeah. I'm pretty positive, but my spouse, she's a negative one. Right? I know. All of you are like, I'm not gonna, no eye contact. I'm just gonna look straight ahead. But see how 80% negative thoughts creep into our mind? Come on. And here's a point. You can't change how anyone else thinks, can you? Can you change how your husband or wife, how your kids, how your boss, how your friend thinks? No, but we human beings spend so much time trying to fix everyone else. And all we can fix is ourselves. And these negative thoughts just creep in our mind all the time. So, what are your thoughts fixed on? Question you have to ask. And not only what are your thoughts fixed on, what percentage? Higher or lower than 80%? It's up there. What percentage? But here's the important question. How do you break the cycle? How do you break the cycle? The Apostle Paul is going to give us such incredible insight and a tool to break this cycle. And he's writing this letter to the church located in the ancient city called Philippi. We call it the book of the Bible Philippians, but it was to this church. And Philippi was located in ancient Greece. And what I love about this letter, the other letters Paul wrote to different churches had quite a bit of correction within those letters. He was trying to correct behavior and correct thinking and correct some theology. But in the letter to the church in Philippi, you can tell there's just this really warm, loving relationship where the people there really wanted to follow kind of what Paul was trying to encourage them to live out. And so there's no correction in the letter to the church in Philippi. In fact, Paul just kind of pours on so much encouragement just to keep them living a life that was focused on Jesus. And so at the very end of this letter, Paul writes these words. He said, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. He's like, hey, one more thought to land on, one more thought that you have to hold on to, one more thought. And he goes, fix your thoughts. Attach your thoughts to. Because all of our thoughts are fixed to something. But Paul's going to give us the framework. So no. Don't just fix your thoughts on anything. These are the things you should fix your thoughts on. And he's going to give 6 very, very specific things to fix your thoughts on. So we're going to walk through all 6 of those things. And for every 6, or for every one, I came up with a question that you have to wrestle with. Now, let me warn you on this. These are amazing questions that you're going to hate. How's that, right? But they're real questions. And I think these questions help wrap around these 6 areas that Paul says you've got to fix your mind on these things. Now, what I don't want you to do is leave here and log off online and say, okay, I'm going to do all 6. You'll fail. Pick one. There's going to be one out of these six. I'm just one out of these six that all of a sudden you're going to say, that's it. You're going to know it. You're going to feel it. You're like, that's my one. You're going to pick one. And that's what you need to work on. That's what you need to focus on, that one. So here we go. The first one Paul says is fix your thoughts on what is true. And the opposite of true is false. Years ago, someone said to me that people, you and I are people, we connect the dots in the most pathological way possible when it comes to each other. And we do this all the time. Here's the example, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has had this happen to yourself, right? You walk into a store, you're going shopping, you have your list. As you're making your way with your basket through the store, you look across the store, you see someone you know. Maybe it's your best friend or maybe it's a distant friend, but it's someone you know. You would call that person a friend. You kind of get that person's attention, you kind of wave to them, like, hey! And they all but ignore you. Grab onto your cart, and what do you start thinking? Well, I thought they were a real friend. I trusted them with my secret. I called them. I wrote them a birthday note. They never wrote me a birthday note. I can't believe it. I waited at them. I smiled. I'm busy. Are they too busy for me? And what happens the rest of the time you're shopping? Connecting the dots in the most pathological way possible. In reality, that might be the case. Maybe. Or maybe that person, 30 minutes before, got a text that one of their family members got rushed to the hospital. Now they're running to the store to get food, get supplies so they can get home, to get the kids fed, so they can get in the car to drive to the hospital, and they're so worried because they don't know what's going on. But what we do is we connect the dots and we think we're right. And we do it all the time. And we never take time to go, whoa, maybe that's not the picture at all. And as we can take a step back and say, I'm not going to connect dots that I don't know are there, then maybe, just maybe, I can actually find out what is true. And this happens all the time. And that's why Paul says, fix your mind on what is true. But this becomes difficult. Why? Because we have capital T truths and lower T truths. And the danger of the lower T truths are false statements disguised as capital T truths. And so we believe these lower T truths, even though they're false statements. They're not real, but they feel real. And this is how it plays out. You are raised in a house. And you have a parent look at you and say, you will never be good enough. Let's go back there. Never be good enough. So you start telling yourself that you'll never be good enough, that your life, you are not significant in this world at all. And that statement, lower T truth, is disguised as a capital T truth, and it feels so true, but it's a false statement. And let me prove it to you. Do you really think the God of the universe, when he went to create you, took a time out? It's like, I'm really exhausted. Someone else create that person. Good enough is good enough. Do you really think God put you on this earth just to be mediocre? Do you think that God of the universe, it's springtime, right? Everything's coming back out alive. It's beautiful. God's creation is amazing, isn't it? Do you really think that God just took a day off when he went to create you? Not good enough. That's looking at God and saying, God, you failed when you created me. See what you start doing? For some of you, here's another example. For some of you, you've convinced yourself, lowercase t truth, that your boss is trying to keep you down, to hold you back. And there's like a 0.01% that might be true. But I'm not going to let you have that out. But you think to yourself, yeah, my boss is keeping me down. And remember what happens. What you think generates what? Feelings. Now your thought process is, my boss has it out for me. My boss is trying to keep me down. My boss is trying to hold me back. Now that's generating feelings that your boss is out to get you. And now that comes out in actions. Now your boss probably doesn't know what you're thinking, which is a good thing. But guess what your boss is sensing? And guess every time your boss comes to interact with you, guess what you're doing with your thoughts and your feelings and your actions? You're pushing your boss away, which is reinforcing your thought, because now your boss is like, what's wrong with that person? And now there's distance, and now it's reinforcing your thought. In all reality, if you change your thinking, and maybe your boss actually wants the best for you, and that's why you got to start to take the disguise off of those lower T truths. So here's a hard question. What small T truths are holding you captive? We all have them. We all have them. And they hold us captive. Second one, Paul says, what is honorable? Fix your mind on those things. Now, what's interesting about this ancient Greek word for honorable that we translate honorable, it's only used 3 times in the New Testament. One time here in Philippians 4:8, the other 2 times is attached to church leaders. But the Greek culture actually used this word to describe the Greek gods as lofty. So that's where that word came from. But Paul takes this word, and I think what Paul was trying to get at is to elevate your thoughts in a way of what thoughts are worthy of respect, right? To elevate. Which leads to the question, and this is a great question, by the way, what if your thoughts became public? Would people respect you more or less? What if your thoughts, every thought, was on a permanent Twitter feed? Every thought that people could scroll through. That would be a scary world. And entertaining at some level. But I think that's what Paul's getting at. What if every thought, would people respect you more or respect you a whole lot less? Paul goes on and goes, fix your thoughts on what is right. This is conforming to God's standard. Worthy of God's approval. Are you fixing your thoughts on the things God would approve of? So here's the question. Does God approve of that thought? I simply think about it this way. Like there's times thoughts come in my mind and I will literally say that thought out loud. And then I'll just simply say to God, thumbs up or thumbs down on that thought. And it's amazing. Like right when I say that out loud, and I will say it out loud. God, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's like God's like, do I really have to answer that? You know which way that thumb's going, right? And it's like down. But what if that's your lens? Every thought. Whoo, God, that thought. God's like, I'm just going to keep my thumb down. And maybe I'm going to turn it up once, right? But if we start to pass every one of those thoughts through that set of lenses, and say, God, what would you approve of that? We automatically know that answer. The next one was pure. This is morally pure. I mean, that's why what you watch and what social media accounts you follow and what you put in your mind is so important. Because your thoughts, what you think about, will generate feelings. Your feelings will determine your actions, which will reinforce your thoughts. So here's the question. Does that thought reflect God's holiness? And the importance of this question is this. It's what reflects God's holiness. But so many times we kind of want to ignore God's holiness and we want to just make sure that we're better than each other. Have you ever thought this? I know you have. At least and then you can fill in the blank. At least I don't cuss as much as that person. See, I'm better, God. At least I don't drink as much as. See, God, I'm on a better pathway than that person. At least I didn't cheat on my business taxes as much as. And that's what we do. We start comparing to everyone else and we think we're pretty good. That's not the standard. Your standard isn't the person you're sitting by. Your standard isn't me. Our standard is God's holiness. And that's why this question, hey, does that thought reflect God's holiness? Or the fifth one, what's lovely? And the best way to translate that word is what's attractive. What's attractive? So here's the question. Does that thought attract people to me? Because remember, your thoughts generate feelings, and your feelings generate actions. And here's the thing. People might not know what you're thinking, but they can sense your feelings. Can't we? And so are your thoughts attracting people to you, or are they repelling people? Like if you think to yourself, well, yeah, no one wants to be my friend, guess what people are going to feel at some level? That you don't want to be their friend. Because your thoughts connect to your feelings, connect to your actions, reinforce your thoughts, right? See how this goes? So are your thoughts attracting people to you, or are they repelling? And maybe for you, it's your thoughts are attracting a certain type of people to you. So if you don't like the people that are around you, maybe you need to start changing your thinking. The last one, admirable. And this one is all about, do my thoughts offend people? Are my thoughts offensive? We've always said to our girls, attached to their words, but remember, words are a type of action. And we have always said this statement to our girls when it comes to their speech, but this question is the same thing for your thoughts. Why? Because your thoughts are your feelings, your actions. I hope you have this memorized by now. So here's the question. Does that thought tear down or build up? Does it? Does that thought build a person up, or is it just tearing them down? And Paul goes on, and Paul goes, think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. But Paul doesn't stop there. Remember, I said focus, intentionality, hard work, dedication. This whole series is going to be about. The question is, are you willing to put in the hard work, the focus, the energy, the intentionality, the dedication? Are you willing? Not is your best friend or your husband or your wife or your parent or whoever else. Again, you can't change anyone. You can only change you. And Paul just gets right there. Paul goes, hey, keep putting it into practice. It's going to take an incredible amounts of effort. That's why I shared about me. So many people, when they've heard this story about me, they're like, oh, that's shocking. You're just a people person. I'm like, I'm not. I've just worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. It has taken me so many years of facing that part of who I am. Changing the way I think, which has influenced my feelings, which has guided my actions. I'm just telling you. Some of you right now are thinking, well, it's just who I am. No, it's not who you are. I mean, it's who you are now. But if you want to live to win, just maybe, you need to change how you think. And Paul then writes, he goes, then the God of peace will be with you. So here's our guiding truth. What you think will generate your feelings. What you feel will guide your actions. And what your actions are, they will reinforce what you think. And that's a cycle. And that's a cycle you need to break and rewire in your thought life. Winning starts with thinking. Your thought life. So look at these 6. What's the one? What's the one? What's the one? And here's the homework. I know for some of you, you're like, church homework? Oh, here's your homework. Got to pick one. But you have to commit to do something. You have to commit to write it out or write it down and say it out loud. You got to get your thoughts out loud. Now, no, let me preface. Be careful who you say it out loud around and who sees that piece of paper. But you got to get it out. And practically, I do this all the time. I love to bike ride, so I was on a ride the other day, and I love it because I can lose myself, and it's so beautiful outside. So I'm riding my bike through the Pennsylvania hills. They're not hills, they're like mountains. They're horrible, and the roads are not good either. But that's a whole other story. And so I'm writing, and what will happen is most of the time I'm just really enjoying myself. God and I are having a conversation, but also my mind went to a dark place in a relationship. I mean dark. And all of a sudden I found myself like eviscerating this person with my thoughts. It was dark. Like I'm glad my mind wasn't connected to a Twitter feed, right? But this is what I do now. When that thought comes into my mind, also when I realize it, I mean, it took me a few moments. When I realize it, I said it out loud on my bike. No one's around. I mean, the squirrels were around, but no one else was around. I said it out loud. I made that statement come out of my mouth. And when I did it, it felt so wrong. I mean, I'm now saying it. Now I'm hearing myself. I'm like, Chris, you thought that? I'm like, I thought that. But then I don't stop there. I'm like, oh, God, I'm just going to hand that thought to you. And it's like I say it out loud, and God's like, really? You said that? I'm like, I said that, God. I'm like, help me out, God. You know, God's like, I will, right? We have this whole conversation, but I got it out loud. And then I invited God right in the midst of that mess. I'm like, God, you got to help me. You got to help my heart because that's not pure, and that's not right, and that's not honorable, and this is not even true. And I invited God right in the midst of that thought. And you know what happened? All of a sudden, it started to change my thinking around on that person. Amazing. But that's why you got to write it down. You got to say it a lot. You got to get those thoughts out. Shine a light on them. And invite God to be part of it. If you do, you'll start winning in your thought life. You'll start. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take dedication. It's going to take focused energy. It's going to take intentionality. But you can break the cycle. The question is, do you want to? Fix your thoughts on what is true, what is honorable, what is right, what is pure, what is lovely, and what is admirable. And practice. And watch what happens. Watch what happens.